going to be entitled No Bones About It. No bones about it. And then we'll get into worship with Althea, and then we'll get into the meat of the message afterwards. No bones about it. It may take us 3 parts to do this whole series. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Thank you, sister. The official caption, or the official title of the documentary that recently aired on the Discovery Channel was entitled, how many know? The Lost Tomb of Yeshua. You've either heard about it or seen it. How many have honestly seen it? I know that I have. It was wonderful entertainment. Just me and Ted? That's it? Brother Dr. Hanel, you had the chance to see it. How many have heard about it? How many have had others bring it up in a conversation? To bring it to their attention, to bring it to your attention. It begins with the fact that, quote, there has been an incredible archaeological discovery in Israel recently, which now changes the history and has shocked the world. Tombs, graves, with the names Maria, Jesus, como Jesus, or in Aramaic, Yeshua, son of Joseph, Mariamni Emara, which means Mary and teacher, and Judah, the son of Yeshua and Mary, the teacher, have been found as the investigation begins and does claim. Some of the things I'm going to be sharing with you, by the way, have been passed on to me through personal knowledge, other things through a friend of mine, Rabbi Rob Miller. So I've taken some of the things that I've shared many years ago that he got a hold of and modernizing that with this discovery from the Discovery Channel. So I don't take all the credit for these things. Some of the notes I'm using are from Rabbi Miller. But on the other hand, some of the things that Yahweh is going to show you are not from Rabbi Moshe or from Rabbi Miller, they're from Rabbi Yeshua. Amen. The documentary touches on many sensitive issues, said Janet Root, President and General Manager of the Discovery Channel. The experts' findings reported in the documentary relies on the application of the most current forensic patina analysis. Patina is the outward coating on these ossuaries, these bones, these containers that they found. So a patina is an outward covering, okay? The film that covers the ossuaries. Paleo-DNA techniques as well as statistical evaluation. But it is the beginning of a complex archaeological journey, and not the end, she said. Spokesman for the Discovery Channel. Because of that, we believe that this film should be viewed in the context of a spirited dialogue, and viewers should decide their own viewpoints and conclusions. Well, that was nice of her to allow us to reach our own conclusions. Brought to you by the Lost Tomb of Yeshua. Brought to you by, let's see who brought it to us. Dr. Hanel. Let's see who brought it to us. The host and producer, director and writer, Simcha, unbelieving Jewish man, Yaakov Dovici. I don't expect you to memorize that name, Abraham, so don't worry. Director, producer, and writer, Simcha, Jewish unbeliever, Simcha Yakobovici. Sounds like he might have some Italian blood. Is an Israeli-born Canadian Orthodox Jew, known as the Naked Archaeologist. I don't understand that. Neither do I want to understand that. He is an Emmy Award-winning documentary filmmaker and a true master of his field, who has expertise that spans the disciplines of politics, journalism, and archaeology. All the Bible stuff is going to come after the worship. Okay, we're going to go to the scriptures, turn to this, so those of you who like are, you're not going to have any scriptures until after the worship. And I'm just setting the table. So, Amen. The executive producer, well, you'll have so much Bible will be coming out of your gefilte fish. The executive producer is James Cameron. We won't call him Yaakov, James Cameron. The Oscar-winning director that gave us such hits as, I can't even pronounce this, Xenogenesis, 1978, Piranha, Part 2, The Spawning, 1981, The Abyss, 1989, and oh yes, The Titanic, in 1997. The highest grossing movie in history, and the winner of 11 Oscar awards. Cameron is a student of the Kabbalah Center of Los Angeles, just like Queen Esther, Madonna. Now, of course, she's Queen Esther. So anyway, he is a disciple of Berg, of the Berg Kabbalah Center. Now, there is some Kabbalah that is biblical, but the Berg Center in LA, that's the place where Britney is going for rehab, and all these stars that are trying to escape jail time, they get trained at the Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles. I know what I'm talking about, so don't look at me that way. James Cameron also has another side, documentaries. Earlier this year, he tackled the question of the Exodus in the Exodus Decoded for the History Channel, in which he used rational thinking to prove that the Exodus was true, albeit unmiraculous. But Mr. Cameron has never had that kind of respect for Yeshua. Remember, he brought us the episode Dark Angel, and Jesus brought a casserole, a 2001 TV episode, as the executive producer. An advisor on the film is ex-Church of Christ seminarian and current B'nai Noach member, Dr. James Tabor. How many have ever heard of Dr. James Tabor? He is a B'nai Noach. What is a B'nai Noach? Telling non-Jewish believers in Yeshua that they can't be Israel, but they can be the sons of Noach and keep 9 generalized laws, assumingly taken from the Torah, that gets them into the Olam Haba, or gets them into the kingdom. They don't have to follow the Torah because they're just stupid Gentiles. So the rabbis have mercifully narrowed it down to 9 Noahic principles. Don't kill, don't steal, don't eat animals with blood. And by being children of Noah, or B'nai Noah, they get into the kingdom. That is terrible theology. You ever come across that? Or someone who is involved with say, I'm not a believer in Yeshua, but I am a B'nai Noah, or a son of Noah movement? Down. Wow. That is them telling you that you're not spirit-filled enough to obey Torah like the Jewish people are. That's arrogance and prejudice. So James Tabor is a current member of the B'nai Noach, is also the chair of the Department of Religious Studies at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, whom Rabbi Miller met at the B'nai Noach conference in 1991. He no longer considers himself to be a believer, because now he is under the tutelage of the rabbis, discipling him how to be not a full Jew, but kind of like a half Jew through the B'nai Noach program. A quasi-conversion to rabbinical Judaism. He is a biblical scholar and author whose current research involves Judaism in the time of Yeshua, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and other ancient documents related to understanding the historical Yeshua. His new book, The Jesus Dynasty, The Jesus Dynasty, The Hidden History of Jesus, His Royal Family, and the Birth of Christianity, was published by Simon & Schuster in April 2006 to critical acclaim. His undergraduate and MA degrees are in biblical languages from Pepperdine University. And his PhD, his doctorate, is from the University of Chicago in the area of biblical studies, with an emphasis on Christian origins and ancient Judaism. Dr. James Tabor made headlines around the world in 2005 with his co-discovery with archaeologist Shimon Gibson of an ancient cave connected with the ministry of John the Baptist. Now the link to all these men is a Dr. Charles Pellegrino, who has a doctorate in paleobiology from the University of Wellington in New Zealand. He is a best-selling author of several books, this Dr. Pellegrino, relating to archaeology, including Return to Sodom and Gomorrah, Ghosts of the Titanic, Unearthing Atlantis, Ghosts of Vesuvius, whatever that is, and the New York Times bestseller, Her Name, Titanic, which in part has inspired James Cameron's film, The Titanic. It was Pellegrino's dinosaur cloning formula that inspired Michael Crichton's monster hit, Jurassic Park. These guys are Hollywood folks. These are not scholars or theologians. These are Hollywood people. That's all these guys are. Now listen, he introduced Yacovici, the Jewish Orthodox, who was the producer of the documentary, and Cameron to each other, making the Lost Tomb of Jesus film possible. As James Cameron said in a press release for the film, it doesn't get bigger than this. We've done our homework. We've made the case. And now it's time for the debates to begin. Well, what I'm going to do over the next 2 or 3 weeks as we go into the Pesach season, I'm going to end the debate before there can be a debate with biblical proof. I'm not going to counter this garbage with somebody else's humanistic, secular garbage. I'm going to counter it with the word of Yahweh. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. The Rabbi Miller goes on to say, I watched the documentary and found it very entertaining. In the panel after the film, Ted Koppel, formerly of Nightline fame, moderated a discussion with the same Simcha Yacobovici, Dr. James Tabor, Dr. William Deaver, and Professor Jonathan Reed. Professor Reed says he has issues with the film because it puts archaeology in a bad light, and it calls the documentary archaeo-porn. Archaeo-porn. Creating a chain of suppositions upon suppositions. By the end of the discussion, Simcha Yacobovici, an investigative reporter, came off as an overly ambitious huckster at best and a hoaxer at worst. Rabbi Miller says, I wouldn't trust a reporter who broke into a sealed tomb without government permission. If he wants to be seen as a journalist, engaging in journalism, he needs to adhere to the standards of journalism, which are to shed light, not to specifically portray events in such a way as to bolster one particular view. Here's what we know. On March 28, 1980, now stay with me, because the more you understand the facts, the more you're going to appreciate what I'm going to share with you later. Okay? On March 28, 1980, a construction crew developing an apartment complex in Talpiot, Jerusalem, uncovered a tomb, which archaeologists from the Israeli Antiquities Authority excavated shortly thereafter, in 1980. Archaeologist Shimon Gibson surveyed the site and drew a layout plan. Scholar L.Y. Ramani later published a catalog of Jewish ossuaries, meaning bone containers, that described 10 ossuaries or bone containers or limestone bone boxes found in the tomb. And by the way, this has been on CNN, Fox News, It's been on every news program, basically, and every news channel in the world. So even if you didn't see it, a lot of people are being convinced, and a lot of people are being swayed by this. It's making headlines around the world. And again, the documentary's name is The Lost Tomb of Yeshua. Scholars know that from 30 BCE to 70 CE, first century Jerusalem, many people in Yerushalayim would first wrap bodies in shrouds after death. The bodies were then placed in a carved rock tomb where they would decompose for a year before the bones were placed in an ossuary. 5 of the 10 discovered bones in the Talpiot tomb were inscribed in Aramaic Hebrew, such as Yeshua ben Yosef, which is Jesus, son of Joseph, Mara, which of course is supposed to be Mary Magdalene, Matit Yahu, Matit Yahu, oh, that's interesting. Yossi, short for Yosef, Joseph, and we know in the Gospels, in the Gospel of Yochanan Moshe Mark, it talks about one of his brothers, Yeshua's brothers, called Joseph. Not Yosef, but actually by the Hebrew short, abbreviated, poetic version of Yossi, or Yossi. So it seems like this is his family, because all his family is buried with some dude named Yeshua ben Yosef. And then there was a 6th inscription, translated to Yehuda, or Judah, bar Yeshua. Judah, the son of Yeshua. I would have liked to meet that guy. One of the inscriptions is written in Greek, Mariamni e Mara, which can be translated as Maria, the teacher. I didn't know Maria was Aramaic. Such tombs are very typical for that region. Aaron Brody, Associate Professor of Bible and Archaeology at the Pacific School of Religion and Director of California's Bade Museum, told Discovery News. Frank Moore Cross, a Professor Emeritus in the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations at Harvard University, told Discovery News. The inscriptions are from the Herodian period. That means 1st century, in that time, 1st century Judea. The use of limestone ossuaries, or bone containers, and the varied script styles are characteristic of that time. So we find a family tomb with names of Yeshua's family as it is recorded in the Gospels, and the shape of the tomb and the shape of the ossuaries and the limestone used for the ossuaries are typical of the 1st century, the time when Yeshua lived and the time when Yeshua walked the earth. So far, sounds like we're in deep trouble. Francois Bovin, Professor of History of Religion at Harvard University, and a college, discovered a 14th century copy, this is important, of a Greek 4th century manuscript text that contains the most complete version of the Gnostic Gospel, or the Gnostic book, the Acts of Philip, that have ever been found. Which means the apostles and Mariamne, the sister of the apostle Philip. So in this Gnostic book, discovered by Francois Bovin, Professor of History and Religion at Harvard University, he found a 14th century, meaning 1500s, Greek copy of the Acts of Philip, in which there is mentioned a woman named Mariamne, or Mary, the teacher, sister of Philip, meaning Mary Magdalene, who, according to this text, Mary Magdalene, Mariamne, Maria the teacher, became a popular teacher in the early Nazarene Israelite community, according to the Acts of Philip. Are you with me? Let me remind you that in the 1st century, according to Rabbi Miller, 60% of Jewish women had some form of the name of Miriam. 60%. had variations of the name of Miriam. And the top three names for boys in the Herodian period, that period when Yeshua was on the earth, were Yosef, Yeshua, and Yehuda. Those are the three most popular, kind of like Jessica would be today, or John would be today. Everybody has a Jessica in their family, I think. Mr. Cameron says, the chances of finding a tomb with a combination of names together, all mentioned in the Gospels, was like finding a grave marked Ringo next to other graves marked John, Paul, and George. In other words, everybody in Yeshua's family, as is written in the Gospel, was found buried together in a tomb in Jerusalem in 1980. Yeah. Pretty convincing stuff. Yeah. Very convincing. And this Mary Magdalene, who was called Mariamne, is mentioned in the Acts of Philip, a Gnostic gospel that was found in the 15th century. CE. Mr. Cameron goes on to say, he has discovered that Jesus had a son from the tomb named Judah, because one of the ossuaries said Yeshua ben Yehuda. Yehuda ben Yeshua. Judah, son of Yeshua.
Wow.
So according to Mr. Cameron, the Kabbalist from the Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles, who wears red strings, prays to rocks, and uses holy water that he can only get from Los Angeles, has found that Jesus had a son named Yehuda, who was buried alongside Yehuda's mother, Mary Magdalene, Yeshua's wife. Now, then Rabbi Miller goes on to say, hey, Cameron, James, the producer, that's already been done. It was called the Da Vinci Code. It's done. Oh, yeah. That film returned a whopping $77 million in its first week of release. Bula. Bula. I think James wanted to get a whiff of that 77 million. In its first week of release, that could be a great incentive to produce such a documentary. The filmmakers then found traces of bone fragments in the Yeshua Bar Yosef ossuary. That's Yeshua, allegedly Jesus' ossuary, box containing his bones. And in the Mariamne Emara, meaning Maria and teacher in Aramaic, ossuary. So the filmmakers, listen to this, Tehillah, the filmmakers ran micro-DNA tests on the ossuaries of Mariamne, allegedly Miriam from Magdala, and Yeshua, and lo and behold, we are stuck. Guess what they found when they ran DNA testing? The traces of these bone fragments were analyzed by Carney Matheson, a scientist at the Paleo DNA Laboratory at Lakehead University in Toronto, Canada. Mitochondrial DNA examination has determined, according to the producers of The Lost Tomb of Jesus, now listen to this, that the individual in the Yeshua ben Yosef ossuary and the person in the ossuary with the name Mariamne Emara were not related. First of all, they tell us it's a family tomb. Then they tell us they weren't related. But aha, that must mean they were husband and wife. Because if they were husband and wife, they can't have the same DNA.
Oh.
Simcha, unbelieving Jewish man Yacobovici, then makes the leap and says, quote, it is possible that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were a couple.
Wow.
Judah, whom they indicate may have been their son, could have been the young lad described in the Gospel of John, sleeping on Jesus' lap at the Last Supper.
Wow. Incredible. Wow. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
But wait a second, they did a DNA test to determine that Yeshua and Miriam were not related, thus another Da Vinci Code, they were actually husband and wife. But here's a better question that I have for everybody. Why didn't they go ahead and proceed to test the DNA of Yehuda, son of Yeshua? They didn't test that DNA.
Uh-oh.
I guess the medical examiner or the DNA expert was out to lunch. Maybe he was involved with the Anna Nicole Smith investigation and couldn't be reached for comment. In other words, out of 10 or 9 ossuaries, one was missing, we'll get to that later. Out of 10 ossuaries, they tested 2, Miriam of Magdala, allegedly, and Yeshua of Nazareth, Bar Yosef, allegedly, and they didn't match, but they didn't test any of the others, especially Yehuda, Bar Yeshua, Judah, son of Yeshua, to see if he had the same DNA as Yeshua. Because they knew that the whole $77 million treasure hunt would be over. They would see the son didn't have the same DNA as the dude in the Yeshua box. Why didn't they test the DNA of Yehuda Bar Yeshua in his ossuary to settle the supposition? I believe, Rabbi Miller goes on to say, they wanted to leave us with the impression that Yeshua was in fact happily married. Well, of course. I knew that all along. And had a child to capitalize on the popular theory set forth in the Da Vinci Code. In late 2002, Israeli antiquities dealer, listen to this, Oded Golan, publicly announced that he had acquired one of the most amazing religious artifacts ever found. An ossuary with a remarkable epitaph in Aramaic. Yaakov Bar Yosef, James, son of Joseph, Achiu de Yeshua, brother of Yeshua. You remember that a few years ago? They found an ossuary that said James, the son of Joseph, the brother of Yeshua. How many remember a few years ago that archaeological discovery of the ossuary of the one and only James, the first rabbi of the Kehillah in Yerushalayim? This was discovered allegedly by Israeli antiquity dealer Oded Golan. He later admitted, by the way, under oath, that what he found was an ossuary, and I'm ad-libbing here, this is not here, that it said Yaakov, son of Joseph, James, son of Joseph, but the brother of Yeshua was added by somebody.
Wow.
It did say, the ossuary did say, James, son of Joseph, but it didn't say brother of Yeshua. Somebody added that to sell it
Money.
and make money.
Wow.
But now comes along this new documentary that claims that there's a connection between this ossuary and the other ossuaries. The filmmakers noticed, now listen to this, the filmmakers noticed that when the ossuaries were cataloged and received in the Israeli Antiquities Department warehouse, only 9 of the 10 ossuaries were accounted for. There was one missing. They had 9, but one was missing. And what do you think they arrived, what conclusion do you think they arrived at? That the one that was missing was the one that was admitted to be a forgery by this antiquity dealer Oded Golan back in 2002. He said, yes, it's real, but the part about the brother of Yeshua is false. So allegedly, that's the missing one because the tomb had 10 ossuaries and they only found 9. Now, according to the producers of this discovery of the tomb of Jesus, here is the 10th ossuary. The film, where is the missing ossuary? Simcha Yakobovici